I want to ask this, Quan, because you brought this up. You said like Sukuna is the strongest from 1,000 years ago, Kashimo from like 400 years ago. When it comes to Kashimo, right? Because you're saying Sukuna is probably fighting people near Gojo level. Even though I would argue that it's Sukuna, Gojo, and I think everybody else is a far distant third and beyond, right?
Yes.
That's what I would argue. But I gotta ask you this: what purpose did Kashimo serve?
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. It was so wasted. Like the opportunity was wasted because the hype for Kashimo was there. Like Kashimo was a lot of people's favorite characters. Like he was him. Like the fight with Panda, the passive ability with the like he was able to like just off special grade curses, and then the fight with Hikari. Like that's probably the fight with him and Hikari is probably the second best fight in all of JJK, other than the Gojo and Sukuna fight. So it's like we got the build that we saw, but it was clear like during the fight with Hikari and while he was watching the fight with Sukuna and Gojo that there were certain applications of his curse technique that he didn't know how to do. Like he didn't know how to do a domain, like he didn't have a domain expansion. He really relied on a lot of his abilities that he got from 400 years ago, and he was the strongest there. So the lore behind Kashima was that he was born strong. So there was nobody during his era that could even compete. So there was no need for him to kind of
Raise the level.
Elevate or reach another level. So that's why he agreed to kind of like go to the future to fight Sukuna. But yeah, yo, I don't. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing because he was built up, and it was like you could have at least did something, right? Like you could have at least left like a lasting wound, like used your final technique to leave like just like a side wound, like a weakness on him that Yuji and Yuta and everybody can kind of pinpoint, and that can be like the reason why we can point to it. Like, okay, Kashimo did this; he sacrificed himself to do this amount of damage. So now we see everybody else capitalizing off what Kashimo did, but it just seemed like that's why I said like it just seems kind of rush now because like now you're just off in character just to off characters.
Yeah. In my opinion, Mo, I'll actually let you go because my opinion is very, very quick. Like Kashimo's purpose is to hype Sukuna, right? But you just did that by having Gojo give that little afterlife speech, right? So now if Gojo never gives that speech, we just know they had one hell of a fight, and Sukuna comes and he dog walks Kashimo. I'm like, whoa, Sukuna's crazy strong. Like, whoa, now I'm kind of gauging it differently. You know what I'm saying? But because you just had Gojo tell me, Gojo, who I know nobody's been able to mess with, you just had him tell me, I don't even know if this dude was going all out. I don't even know if he needed Megumi's body. So now when I see Sukuna get Kashimo out of there, I feel absolutely nothing. Because you already just told me how strong he was. So I knew this guy had no chance. I knew he had no chance. So there was absolutely zero shock factor for me because you ruined that by letting Gojo go out and say that nonsense. You know what I'm saying? So to me, Kashimo's purpose was missed because then you gave Kashimo's purpose to Gojo and letting Gojo say that.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Mo. That's my perspective.
So Kashimo, and I forgot to include this like in the past segment as well, but like Kashimo was also another reason why I knew Gojo was going to get smoked as well, because he was built up as this character. He fought Hikari, but his sole purpose was to fight Sukuna, and it kept boosting him up. So we knew we was going to get a Sukuna and Kashimo fight. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, if Gojo's going first, then it doesn't really look too good for Gojo because we're going to get Kashimo versus Sukuna somehow, some way. Otherwise, why would it introduce a character that his sole purpose is to fight Sukuna? He keeps mentioning Sukuna, and he's just there, and he hasn't even revealed this curse technique, right? So that's that. But Kashimo, right? him dying to Sukuna, I'm not surprised by at all. Nor do I even have an issue with. The issue is how he died. Right? That's my main concern. That's my main issue. And I think the only purpose that we really got from Kashimo's death was a glimpse into Sukuna's psychology in terms of why Sukuna operates the way he operates. Because in that dreamlike sequence, Sukuna's basically saying, like, you acknowledge someone that, you know, and you kind of show them gratitude when you kill them, right? In the rightful way. But ultimately, Sukuna reveals that he just likes to play with things that he finds interesting. If he finds you interesting, he wants to drag out the battle as long as possible, right? That's just his psychology. If he's bored with something, he will just instantly kill you. And we've seen it. We've seen him do it multiple times, right? With the guy that has the laser beam on his head. I forget his name. I'm terrible with names. That was fighting Yuta in that three-way battle where he kind of slashes him. He said, "Oh, you adjusted," and then he cuts his head off. Mm-hmm. Right? Situations like that where he just, if he's not interested in you, he's going to look to kind of dismantle you as quickly as possible. But when he's interested in you, he kind of wants to drag out and play with you even more. So I would say Kashimo's death was ultimately just to reveal an aspect of Sukuna that we didn't really know about. That's really it. And I would say that in and of itself, for me as a viewer or as a fan of the series, was not enough to cause his death, right? Especially with that world cutting slash as like a maze, like a pizza cut, like a, I don't know what it's like, tic-tac-toe, like it was like a whole gate. And then I was like, in my honest opinion, I was kind of shocked at the degree of how the world cutting slash was. And I was like, what? So in my head, I'm like, yo, he has this ability and he kills Kashimo. That was the first sign to me that Sukuna might be overpowered, might be too overpowered, you know, for him to just violate Kashimo like that. The only thing Kashimo really did was just force Sukuna to go into his hand for him, which Gojo should have had that. Should have had that. He should have had that action. Like they should have gave it to Gojo, but they gave it to Kashimo, and that shit was useless because he just got one shot it basically. So
yeah, I don't know. Like, I know people love the character. I just never really got behind the character. I can't really explain why. I just never really got behind Kashimo's character. Like I said, once Gojo lost, I was just like, okay, it's gonna be like, we're going right back to the main character, right? Yuji, which is when I first started watching Jujutsu Kaisen, it was like something I appreciated. To me, it was a little bit different in the sense of like maybe One Punch Man, and there might be some other ones that I'm not thinking of. But in most cases, you know, the villain is so strong, and you see the protagonist trying to grind, get to that villain's level. But in this, like, it was like reversed, and to me that was kind of refreshing, where it's like, yo, these guys can't even go with they move because Gojo's out there. I'm like, the good guy is like this powerful, putting fit. I'm like, yo, that's different. And it seemed like, you know, like Sukuna was gonna like not necessarily grind, but he was gonna get back to his form to lead up to this mega showdown. So I'm like, yo, this show is kind of doing it in a different standpoint, you know, and it was kind of like a breath of fresh air, you know what I mean? But now to me, it's kind of just like reverting back to like the standard like anime tropes that you've mentioned, Mo. But like, I never really got behind the Kashimo character, but like from what I was saying about that was like, you know, Yuji was the main character, but obviously he wasn't the strongest character, you know what I'm saying? But obviously his story is what I thought was going to be like the most pivotal thing. Then we started getting more reveals about Yuji, more reveals. So it's like, okay, even though he's not the strongest, he's the most dynamic character, right? He has the most interesting background. And then it kind of started playing out the way it was. And now I realize, yo, Sukuna's probably the main character. Sukuna's probably the main character, bro. And we just didn't realize it.
So I do have a question, being that we're probably not, we're not going to get it. Do you think JJK should have did a time skip?
I'm not sure. When you envision a time skip, like what do you envision happening in the time skip?
Like just a time skip for the main characters to develop their techniques, so that way
they kind of did that, but they just only did it for 1 month span.
That's what I'm saying. It was only like a month.
So longer is what you're saying? Like,
so when we usually for like anime, when we usually see a time skip, it's usually like a year or like 3 years. So I'm like, because in a month, Yuji learns reverse curse technique, and it's like, think about how much how much of a emphasis or how much he could have honed that technique if he would have had 6 months or like a
Okay,
year.
okay.
So it's like, and that's not even with him, just with multiple characters in a sense too, because we just see a power up, and we've seen it in JJK that you and in anime in general, like the near life death experiences are what causes like a dramatic increase in your power output. But
Me
I just
personally,
want
yeah.
take on the time.
Me personally, the reason why I don't need a time skip, right, is because the main characters were Yuji, Megami, and what's her name, Nobara.
Yeah.
So we don't even see Nobara. We don't even know if she's alive or dead. We don't see Megami because his body's been taken over. So the only one we're really seeing is Yuji, and then what has been revealed is that he's special. He's not normal. You know what I'm saying? So I think when you're kind of like normal, you kind of got to go through the regular stuff. Like you need that time skip to justify. But it's like this guy was crafted and molded to be special. You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily need the time skip because I know he was built for this. You know what I'm saying? More so than trained. Like he was bred. You know what I'm saying? So the abilities are coming to him, and yeah, it would be nice to see it. But I'm kind of good because I know he's a special case. You know what I'm saying? And then the other two characters, who are more so along the lines of regular jujutsu sorcerers, they're not even there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of good with no time skip, in my opinion.
In my case, I would say the time skip won't make much of a difference unless it depends when the time skip takes place. Let's say, for instance, instead of the month time, it was a year's time. If the sequences play out how it's been playing out, it won't make a difference, right?
Yeah.
I think people still have kind of their opinions. It just won't change anything, right? It's just the length of time. Now, if let's say you had the time skip where somehow after Gojo's death, they're like, all right, we need to kind of retreat and we need time. And Kenjaku's like, you know what? I need more time for this plan to take place. And then you give them a year and then they come back. Then that just kind of opens up the door to kind of justify their power scaling to get closer to Gojo and for them to jump Sukuna. But then again, it kind of defeats the purpose because then we get a Sukuna that's not necessarily waned against Gojo. And how do you beat him? And that would be a worse situation than what we're currently seeing at the moment. So I do think a time skip will actually hurt the series than actually help the series, in my honest opinion, unless there's a sequence that I'm not even really thinking about.